call to the booth. Aqib Talib here along with Harris and Sanford. We're going to take an early look at this fantasy football world with Hartitz from Pro Football Focus. You don't want to miss that, man. Who stock up, who stock down? Tune in. Paul, drop that beat.
We're back like we left our car keys. Harris and Sanford, Aqib Talib. This is Call to the Booth. We promised you we'll have another podcast this week, and this time we're going to focus on fantasy football coming out of the NFL draft. We are joined by Hartitz, lead fantasy football analyst for PFF and host of the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I am excited to have you and Aqib go back and forth and break down some great strategies and players that you should focus for fantasy football this upcoming season, because we promised our audience we'll help them get some chips. But before we do that, I know most of the time you're accurate, but sometimes you have to deal with a little bit of kickback when you don't always get it right. And most of the time you do get it right, because trust me, I've been following you for a while. But sometimes you can't always get it right. It would be too easy.
The mentions are not always clean, after some of these games on Sunday get stirred up. One of the funnier things is, man, I do these helicopter predictions on a lot of Sundays. I basically try to pick someone maybe going a little bit under the radar, and I'll just drop in this weird Twitter art thing and say, this guy's going for 100 plus yards and 2 touchdowns. I nailed Deshaun Jackson the first time I did it, week 1, 2019. Obviously can't get every single week though. And it's just funny to me how people always have something to say, when 405 comes around, when, the box scores are in and locked, whereas you make the prediction a few days before and people all of a sudden are pretty okay with it. So one funny thing to me was I unfortunately projected Kenny Golladay to have a huge game against the Colts, who good defense, but I just didn't really think that they had been faced a worthy opponent. And unfortunately Golladay goose-egged, not because he sucked, but because he got hurt before halftime. And I actually had people afterwards, even though Marvin Jones caught 2 touchdowns in that very same game, so you can maybe see where I was coming from with the prediction, people still were coming to me later on Sunday saying, what the hell are you talking about, man? You couldn't be more wrong there. But the way I figure it, man, the worst part of the job is every now and again I get strangers barking at me on Twitter. Things could be worse.
Aqib, what you got? I know this year you started to peek into fantasy football. I know over the years you probably had family members or homies say, Aqib, what do you think about this betting line? And I'm assuming majority of the time, because of your knowledge, you're right. But I imagine there might be one like, Aqib, you led me down the wrong path. How do you kick back to that?
Last season, I did pretty good last season. So when the homies would call me, ask me what they think, is he gonna do this? I think I came out. I think I made it out pretty cool. But you're gonna be wrong. It's usually the people who I'm giving information to, they usually like my friends and stuff, right? So they feel real comfortable bashing me, right? So I'm the butt of all the jokes, boy. Stick to plan, and you know what I'm saying. I done heard it all, Ian. So hey, trust me, I get it too.
100%.
What you guys should do is when you get it right, you come back with the receipts and say, where's my commission on this bet that you placed?
I come with the post. You know what I'm saying? You know how we do, Harrison. I got to let them know. Post it.
Yeah. For sure. Excited to break down Aqib. I know you referenced what we did this past year. We are going to talk about some potential no-fly zone defenses that you should be trying to stay away from when you're targeting an offense or a wide receiver. But first, let's talk about some fantasy studs coming out of this out of the NFL draft this past weekend. Ian, is there any player that was either recent drafted this year or because of things kind of shaped out in the draft that you're really seeing a movement upwards in draft boards?
Yeah, a couple guys really stand out to me as just having gotten the best case landing spots, because as much as you might love a certain prospect, like Virginia Tech's Elijah Herbert was one of these running backs that a lot of people were high on. Now he's on the Bears and he's behind 3 guys that are likely going to get touches ahead of him. So the landing spot and the draft capital for fantasy especially is just so important in projecting what they're going to do in 2021. So with that said, guys, Najee Harris of the Steelers is just best case. And I understand their offensive line still has a ways to go, but you look at last year, the bottom 3 offensive lines in the league were the Chargers in terms of PFF run blocking grade, the Chargers, the Steelers, and the Dolphins. I mean, both Eckler and Myles Gaskin were still top 12 PPR backs because they catch passes. That's exactly what we're expecting Najee Harris to do in Pittsburgh, because as much as we've seen a committee here for the past 2 years, 2014 to 2018, whether it's Le'Veon Bell, James Conner, D'Angelo Williams, when Le'Veon was kind of getting suspended there for a couple games here and there, all these guys were just getting one of the biggest biggest workhorse roles in the league. And I feel like Mike Tomlin, who is a featured runner guy, he has that mentality. He's talked about that. I think they get back to making Harris, the next great Steelers back. For me, he's a top 15 back right away, and that feels low. Just two other quick notes. Typically in fantasy, we want to focus, at least for rookies, and the top 3 rounds. Over 80% of top performing QBs, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends since 2010 have been round 1, round 2, or round 3 picks. I think we have 2 potential exceptions this year, though. Amon-Ra St. Brown for the Lions, who, Aqib, I'd love to hear, if you have any thoughts about, him or these Lions receivers, because it's just the most wide open offense in the league in terms of available targets from last year. So somebody's got to be catching those passes from Jared Goff. I know he's not everybody's favorite quarterback, but the guy's still going to throw for yards. I think St. Brown could be a sneaky target to lead the way in targets. And also Jets running back Michael Carter. I mean, going in the draft, we saw the Steelers, the Jets, and really the Falcons as the 3 teams that just didn't have a solidified starting running back. Michael Carter is someone that a lot of people thought would go higher than the 4th round, and he just finds himself in a best case situation in terms of, just projected volume. So for me, Najee Harris, Michael Carter, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, guys we should be targeting heavily in fantasy.
I love them running backs because Michael Carter, he a big play waiting to happen. So many big plays, and then like you said, the Jets ain't really had nobody to utilize that spot. So he's gonna get a bunch of touches, man. He's definitely gonna be in that backfield getting a bunch of touches. And if the Steelers got a number 1 running back, what time it is with them. They threw screens all year last year because they didn't really have a back there with Connor being hurt, things like that. So they know Najee can shoulder the load, man. He's going to be on the field all day. So I love those 2 picks. But I'm going to go with the wideouts, man. I'm going to go with the new number 1 wideouts. Jamar Chase, he in the offense where they throw the ball a ton. And he's back with Burrow. So I'm excited, man. You throw 20 touchdowns to a guy. It's great chemistry there, and he's the best receiver in the draft, in my opinion. And it's not the best passing defense over in the AFC North, right? So you got to look at the Ravens, but Steelers started off hot. They kind of fell off at the end, but man, you could throw the ball in the AFC North. You could throw the ball around over there. And then I like DeVonta, man. I think that's another. You link back up with your quarterback. I just like the immediate chemistry. That's what I like, man. I think with the offseason going to be the way it's going to be, it's not going to be like non-COVID years. You're going to have limited time with your team, limited time with your quarterback. So the more familiarity you have with them, I think going to be the better. So I think DeVonta hop in, immediately be the number 1 receiver. And with that O-line coming back in Philly, man, I like Philly to surprise a lot of people. And if I expect Philly to be a good team, they got to have a number 1 receiver going crazy, and I think it's going to be DeVonta.
It's funny you brought that up, Aqib. We're we did see all these teams really make an effort to pair their quarterback with a former teammate. Burrow got Chase. Hurts obviously got DeVonta. Tua got Waddle. Tua. They even gave Trevor Lawrence, Etienne to kind of fill
exactly. That's almost like a wideout, right? He gonna catch him. He gonna catch a lot of passes for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, it's tough to immediately expect the rookies to have this high efficiency, but it can't hurt being with the guy that they've already caught passes from.
Exactly. And then I don't know how you feel about this top 10 in, but I think this top 10 here is second to none, man. I ain't seen a top 10 like this in at least the last 5 years, right? I think they hit on every pick, and I'm excited to see what this top 10 going to do in this fantasy world, man, because it's a bunch of talent in these top 10 picks.
Even Kyle Pitts, man, we can call him a tight end all we want. The guy's a number 1 pass game option. He really is in that, Kelsey, Kittle, Waller mode where you can make him the lead guy. I'm a little worried because, Julio, Ridley, they're going to be getting their targets too. But I think there are some passing games like Cincinnati, like Atlanta, like Dallas, where, it's got to be the right spot. But I think they can enable more than 2 fantasy relevant guys.
Definitely.
Excited to watch that Cincinnati offense. And I guess as we'll look at more offenses in general here in a bit, but do want to get to some players whose stock might be down. You guys referenced Travis Etienne. Last year, James Robinson, if you had him on your fantasy football roster, particularly during that playoff stretch, pretty good chance you won. But this past draft, here comes Travis Etienne. He's going to take some possessions here from James Robinson. Ian, are there any other players that you see have potentially a negative impact when it comes to the fantasy football perspective?
possessions. I think he's going to take that whole backfield from James Robinson, man. It's unfortunate. I mean, he was great last year, but it matters what Urban Meyer thinks, not us. And he values Etienne as a first-round pick. He can talk about, it being a 3-back committee as much as he wants, but I think by, October, we're going to see Etienne be the leader in that backfield. I think a similar case could be made for Javonte Williams over Melvin Gordon. The Broncos could actually save, man, a ton of money off Gordon's deal if they can find a trading partner. So, we'll see. There are teams like the Falcons, the Dolphins that didn't really add to the position. I'm not so sure 2021 version of Melvin Gordon is someone that a lot of teams are going to have huge trade interest for, but either way, it's a 2-back backfield. And now with Javonte there, threatening Gordon's touches, I certainly want the rookie in the equation. With the wide receivers, I'm with Aqib. I think Jamar, I think DeVonta, I think Waddle are probably going to be the number one guys in the new offenses. And that's great for their quarterbacks. It's not so great for the other receivers that are already there. I think they'll be fine. Fuller, Higgins, Boyd, Parker, to a lesser extent, Jalen Reagor. These guys have already proven that they're great NFL receivers. But in fantasy land, we really want to chase that volume. And now we're looking at, 100 to 110 targets as opposed to the 130, 140 that we could have seen if they had left it alone. So, this is great news for, again, Burrow, Tua, even Jalen Hurts. Like all these guys are, I think, stock up. And from a fantasy perspective, just, there's only one football, so many targets to go around. It's going to be crowded and passing games that aren't quite like, with the exception of the Bengals, who we mentioned, I don't quite have the same confidence in the Eagles or the Dolphins enabling all these fantasy relevant receivers.
Right. Yeah. Somebody number's going to come down. I actually got the same. I'm looking at, I got Javonte, and then I got the Eagles receiving core, Dolphins receiving core. Like that's who's stock coming down. I got the same exact thing. Ian hit it on the head.
Same page. There we go.
Exactly, man. It's with Jaylen Waddle being around, Fuller. Some of those drawing up deep passes to Fuller, not half of them gonna go to Waddle, right? So some of those post corner double moves, triple moves, 1-man routes or 2-man routes, block them up and let 2 guys run routes. It's not just gonna be Fuller all the time, man. Now he gonna have to split those things with Waddle. It's gonna be who's ever the healthiest get the deep balls this week, right? So.
Guys, that was a great go back and forth. I think a lot of people should have brought out their notepads and make sure they got right for the entirety of this episode. We're not done. You talked about deadly receivers. There's also deadly defenses. So last year, Ian, when Aqib and I were doing the show, we were talking about some players that we targeted during the playoff stretch because the schedules were just too easy. For example, Jonathan Taylor, David Montgomery. If you had those guys, particularly for the playoff run, not necessarily the majority of the regular season, but the playoff run, you're going to do pretty well. And I kind of take that same mindset when I'm potentially drafting a wide receiver and I look at some of their matchups. And there's some no-fly zone secondaries that are just dangerous to go against. If you have a number one receiver, he's going against Xavier Howard, you're not really going to get him. Maybe you might not get him at a number one wide receiver slot. I'm wondering, are there any defenses, and it might not necessarily be secondaries, but do you see any defenses that are so good that you might say to yourself, hey, if it's this receiver versus this receiver and this guy is in this team's division, I'm going to have to stay away because I know they're going to see them at least 2 times. Any defenses that would impose that level of threat to a guy's fantasy football candidacy in terms of season-long leagues?
So I'm a firm believer of start your studs. I mean, look, Julio Jones can be facing the Dolphins, and that's an objectively tougher matchup than if he's facing the Bengals, but we're still starting Julio freaking Jones. So I think we need to not overreact to what we think we know about defenses. Obviously, I hate when people say defenses that don't matter in fantasy football, but all they're trying to say is it's very tough for us to properly kind of figure out how much they're going to matter in fantasy. As I remember there's a game a couple years ago where Josh Norman shadowed Odell Beckham, but he only did it on the outside, and Beckham didn't have a catch against Norman. So you could say like, yeah, that's a tough matchup. Well, Beckham also had over 100 yards from the slot. So it's just not always something we can properly measure beforehand. If we knew every single team's game plan, then maybe, but obviously that's not a reality. With that said, the 2 defenses I think got a lot better. One, the Washington football team. I mean, they've given me some like just 2019 49ers vibes, all those first round picks on the defensive line. We saw all the pressure they were already having last year. And one of the more underrated free agent signings I thought was getting William Jackson over there. I mean,
huge.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's not like he had a bunch of help over there in Cincy. So let's put him on a defense where he has that pass rush, doesn't have to worry about covering for more than 3 seconds every time. I think Washington, look, again, don't fade the Cowboys when they're playing Washington. I get it, but that defense is going to be scary. And if Fitzpatrick and those receivers can put up some numbers, man, they might just be back-to-back NFC East champs. I would also point out the Chargers getting Asante Samuel Jr. round 2 to replace Casey Hayward, I thought was great. They don't have like as loaded of a cornerback room as maybe they did a few years ago with Barrett.
But it's cool though.
Derwin James, please, man, just please get Derwin James back. It's been so sad not being able to watch that guy. But hey, man, Derwin James is out there covering Keenan Allen in practice. I'd like to see what he can do in the regular season. Hopefully Joey Bosa too. You know, every year I feel like we look at the Chargers on paper and we say, oh man, they're capable of so much. Maybe just maybe in 2021 it all comes to fruition.
I don't know about every year, but definitely since my little bro been over there, I've been looking at him every year. Like, they gonna be good this year, man. Here they go. But I like what they got going in the secondary, man. I think Mike Davis gonna really turn that corner. I just had a conversation with Chris about Mike, and he was like, "Leave. We got to get him to the D. We got to get him right, bro. He one of them." So he really like him. So I really like him. And like you said, you bring Sante in to play on that outside. He got great. He's small, but man, when that ball in the air, he's second to none, man. He got great ball skills. You ain't catching no deep balls on him. And then you know Chris in the slot, he the best in the league. Oh, yeah. You get Derwin James back, man. That secondary and defense, period. That is dangerous defense. But I go to Browns, man. I like what the Browns is doing, man. They bring in ball hawks, JJ, John Johnson from the Rams. They bring in Troy. Troy's the starting corner. They draft Newsome, you know what I'm saying? So that's kind of a battle. Who's going to start right here? They got 2 young guys, Gritty and Ward from last year. They got a bunch of corners, man. They got a bunch of safeties. Then they draft Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah out of Notre Dame, man. So I think he's just going to add a level of coverage, just a level of talent in that middle, man. So they bringing something to the table at linebacker now. So they also add Clowney up front, man. You got a great rush. You got a great secondary. So I think that's going to work hand in hand. And I'm telling you, second year Joe Woods too, D coordinator Joe Woods. Second year there, man. He kind of in his bag. He know the guys now, and it'll be their second year in his defense, right? So I'm excited to see what the Browns gonna do, man. I think they're gonna make a lot of noise on defense.
Man, and real quick. I just want to say, like, the offense, you know, they were the first team in our PFF era to have #1 run blocking and pass blocking offensive line, loaded backfield. If Baker keeps playing the way he did last year, we know that side of the field is solved. And man, like you said, Aqib, I mean, they just added so many pieces on defense. I wonder if we could maybe, now I was trying to look for 2021 defensive MVP odds. Maybe this is the year, with all due respect to Aaron Donald. I get it. He can win it every single year potentially. But right. Maybe this is the year Myles Garrett just gets that 20 sack season that we know he's capable of. We saw that dude like bursting out of his damn suit when he was announcing the pick at the draft. You know, I feel like he was starting to get there before the whole helmet thing happened in 2019. You know, maybe just adding, you know, having Clowney across from him, having actual, you know, extra pieces in the secondary to make quarterbacks think twice about getting rid of the ball quick. You know, we all know Myles Garrett's the best guy in Cleveland, but now that there's not, you know, this just massive gap between him and everyone else, maybe we see the best version of him as well.
Aqib, I'm surprised when we were talking about defenses, particularly some secondaries, you didn't reference a former team of yours that got us a DB in the first round.
Yeah, I like what the Broncos is doing too, man. They almost revamped all their corners, right? They had 2 dog safeties already, and then you know they bring in Darby, they bring in Fuller, and Fuller was like a steal in free agency to me. Like he wasn't even expected to be a free agent, boom, he come free. The Broncos grab him, man. That's a great starting left corner for you on that strong side. And then like you said, they bring in Pat Surtain, first round. I love that secondary too. So I mean, it was. I thought I was only naming one, Harrison. You understand? But if I can name two, I was going Broncos, baby. I'm telling you.
Aqib, is there a team that sticks out where you're like, man, everybody should be able to fly over this defense? Because for me, man, I look at the Cardinals and it's like Robert Alford, Malcolm Butler, Byron Murphy. They better hope that Chandler Jones comes back, you know, with a vengeance that can get pressure. Because I'm just not sure if they're gonna be able to hold up in that NFC West.
I was thinking that too. I just knew they was gonna go corner. I thought one of the corners, Pat Surtain or Horn, or at least Fairley, I thought somebody was gonna fall to them and they was gonna have to take him, right? I'm like, they gotta replace Pat Pete. I mean, I like Butler, I like Alford, y'all solid corners, man, but you need big dogs, man. We need big dogs, especially in that NFC West, man. So I feel you on that. I'm a little nervous. I'm a little nervous for that defense too. Zayvon Collins, you get a linebacker who can run, he can fly, he can cover. You got some tight ends over there too. So I agree with you, Ian. I was a little nervous about them Cardinals defense, Cardinals DBs as well.
Yo, this Keenan Allen.
This is Jared Goff.
Devin McCourty here alongside my guy, Jason McCourty on the other side.
Yo, this is Tyrann Mathieu, and you know I had to make the call to the booth.
You know how to make that call to the booth from my guy, Aqib Talib.
All right, Ian, if you can get us kicked off, one wide receiver whose stock is up.
Yeah, I think Nelson Aguilar, man. And look, you can keep putting that dropping babies meme out there. Anytime anyone's talking about Aguilar, like, I get it. The guy hasn't been the most consistent throughout his career. But, man, he had the one really good year in Philly when they won the Super Bowl where he emerged as, kind of a yak monster from the slot. And then last year with the Raiders, we all expected Henry Ruggs to be the guy to really open up that offense in Derek Carr. It was Aguilar. And he still, had his fair share of drops. But you know what? At some point, drops are more of a indicator that you're getting wide open. Like Aqib, you said you're not worried about Judy's drops. Neither am I. Just watch the guy run routes. Like, he's going to be fine. And I think Aguilar, finds himself in a New England offense that might get more pass heavy if and when they move on from Cam Newton to Mac Jones. And while they have those tight ends, there really aren't any other wide receivers other than Kendrick Bourne, Jacoby Myers to get those targets. So Aguilar's someone where I think he's efficient enough with 100 or so targets to really make the most out of them. And the fact they didn't add any, big time resources to the wide receiver room, great news for him. I think we talked about the stock down kind of ones already, the Cincy, Philly, Miami complementary wide receivers. Hey, maybe we see Tua, we see Burrow, and we see Hurts just take these huge steps forward. We just got to be careful again in these crowded offenses of expecting too much from guys that when it's all said and done might be number 3, number 4 in total targets.
You got your Mahomes, you got your Aaron Rodgers, but let's say a quarterback that's worth maybe looking at later in the draft. I know, I think a couple of years back, a lot of people messed around and got Deshaun Watson when he was just getting his start. Or some people last year started off with Joe Burrow. Last year, Justin Herbert won me a fantasy football championship.
Can I say who I think before Ian go?
Yeah, you got it. It's your show.
Hey, Jalen Hurts, man. I don't know why I think Philly going to make some noise this year, man. They're going to get that O-line back. I think that's what it is. When I look at that O-line that they got, and they all of them was hurt last year, so the whole O-line is gone, is hurt. Now they bring the whole O-line back, and then they bring in Landon. What's my dog name? Landon? Alabama.
Landon Collins?
Landon Collins? No. The center.
That's the safety, yeah. Oh, the center.
The center.
I got you.
What's my dog name, man? They just brought him in, right? He plays center, but they got Kelsey, but he can play guards as well. So they almost got a backup for the whole interior of the line.
Landon Dickerson.
With Landon Dickerson, you know what I'm saying? They just brought him in. He's a dog, man, I'm telling you. He could play center, he could play both guards, man. So with that O-line coming back, man, Jalen Hurts, he getting a real number 1 receiver. He already loved Ward. He throw the rock to Ward. I called that game. You could see it in warm-ups. Him and Ward just on the same page. It must be the quarterback-to-quarterback thing. So I just think he got great weapons around him, man. You bring that O-line back. Miles Sanders, he got the big playability. Man, I go Jalen Hurts is going to be a fantasy fool next year.
Yeah. No, I'm with you, man. He's my QB6. The only, I guess a lot of people think Hurts, I guess, is going later. And I think everyone's just kind of agreeing this guy's going to be great. Even though he's not the most polished passer yet, he still threw for over 300 yards in 2 of his starts. We know what he can do on the ground. And to your point about the O-line improving, everything's just improved for Jalen Hurts. So I hear you there. If you want to get Hurts and then maybe a later round guy, though, I think Ryan Fitzpatrick is someone that ended up winning in a big way. Ron Rivera wouldn't name him the starter because he just wants to, say we're all competing and this and that, but they didn't draft anybody. So all it is Taylor Heineke, who, played his ass off against the Buccaneers in that playoff game. That's great. But let's face it, Fitzpatrick, whenever he's been on the field for the past 3 years, has been fantastic for fantasy. He was the QB1 in weeks 1 through 3 in 2018 when Jameis was suspended. In 2019, when he took over for Rosen, he was the QB2 behind only Lamar Jackson in weeks 7 through 17. And then last year, he was the QB8 before Tua, took his job after week 6. I think as we all saw, hey, I don't blame them for trying to see what they had with Tua, but Fitzpatrick was objectively the better quarterback last year. So now you give him Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, Diami Brown, who I thought was one of the better, third round and on wide receivers. I just think this Washington passing game can put up some numbers, and Fitzpatrick is going outside the top 20 right now. So yeah, give me Hurts over Fitzpatrick for sure, but cost adjusted, I think Fitzmagic has another great year in him.
Terry McLaurin, stock up or stock down?
I think it's up. I don't think
from a fantasy football perspective, though.
But I think Samuel almost help him, man. He takes some of the pressure off of him, right? You put Samuel on the other side, you got Fitzpatrick who can spread the ball around. I think McLaurin needed another guy to come in and have somebody on the other side so he can, take some of the eyes, take some of the attention off me, right? So I think it's up, man. I think he's going to have a much better season than he had last year. He got Fitzpatrick throw the ball downfield. Alex Smith, he's conservative. Alex going to try to win the game and try not to lose the game. Fitzpatrick going to definitely try to win the game. He going to throw the ball, man. So I think it's up.
I mean, it's by far the best quarterback he's been playing with. I mean, Kyle Allen, Dwayne Haskins, like these guys, maybe they turn into something more, but just based on what we saw from them, not so much. And yeah, you look at Fitzpatrick's number one wide receiver just over the years, the amount of kind of just veteran guys he's gotten like a second or third contract is out of this world. I mean, Brandon Marshall with the Jets had 173 targets one year. Andre Johnson got 146. Stevie Johnson was tearing it up on those Bills teams. Man, that used to be fun to watch. But yeah, man. So I think Fitzpatrick and McLaurin's going to be the number one guy. I think Curtis and Diami will get this. And as Aqib said, I think they complement McLaurin enough that we don't really have to worry about them overlapping. So yeah, McLaurin's a top 12 fantasy wide receiver, regardless of the format.
Ian, this has been absolutely spectacular. Appreciate your time. Before we get out of here, I'm wondering, you've won your fair share of fantasy football leagues, I assume. Who's the most famous person that you've beaten?
Ooh,
because Aqib, we're gonna put a league together this year. Aqib might want some smoke.
Oh, I'd love to.
Definitely want some smoke.
There we go. Let's get it, man. Let's see what happens. Nah, it's all fun, man. But yeah, I was in it was something like 10 or 11 leagues last year, which was too many, man. If you guys think that's a bunch, I have some friends out here that are in like 70, 80. So,
God. How can you keep up?
Exactly. You got to have some time to have fun and actually watch the game. So, but yeah, appreciate you guys having me on. Always good to talk some ball. I'm happy we finally got these rookies on teams really in the thick of the offseason now.
Definitely.
Sure.
Appreciate it, Ian.